At 11:38 on the hottest Thursday night of July, my neighbor asked me to stay in her apartment until the lights came back. At 11:41, I was sitting on her kitchen floor sharing melting ice cream straight from the carton, trying very hard not to notice the way candlelight made her smile look dangerous. And at 11:44, when the whole building suddenly flashed bright again, she was standing in the hallway wearing my white dress shirt, bare-legged, her hair loose around her shoulders, staring at me like the power hadn't been the only thing that had just come back on. That was the moment I knew my quiet little rule about not getting involved with neighbors was dead. My name is Luke Mercer. I was 26 then, working as an assistant project manager for a construction company in Raleigh, which sounds more impressive than it was. Mostly I spent my days arguing with suppliers, apologizing to clients, and pretending I understood why a sink arriving 3 weeks late was somehow my personal failure. I lived alone in apartment 3B in a brick building with thin walls, bad plumbing, and a courtyard where everyone acted friendly until someone left laundry in the dryer too long. I liked it that way. Simple, predictable, no drama. 2 years earlier, I'd made the mistake of dating someone from my office. When it ended, every Monday meeting felt like a hostage negotiation. After that, I made rules. No coworkers, no women who lived in my building. No getting attached to anyone I had to see while carrying trash bags. Then Sabrina Cole moved into 3C. She was 25, a freelance illustrator with dark curls, sharp eyes, and a laugh that always sounded like she was trying not to give it away too easily. The first time I met her, she was dragging a stubborn bookshelf down the hallway by herself while wearing denim shorts, a black tank top, and the kind of determined expression that made it clear she'd rather die under furniture than ask for help. I stepped out of my apartment with a toolbox in my hand. "You know," I said, "most people use two people for that." She glanced at me, then at the bookshelf. "Most people lack vision. Your vision is leaving scratch marks on the floor. Then the floor should toughen up." I should have gone back inside. Instead, I helped her carry it. That was how it started. Little things, passing each other near the mailboxes. Her knocking once to borrow a screwdriver, then returning it with homemade lemon cookies because she said tools deserved emotional compensation. Me fixing her sticking balcony door because it screamed every time she opened it, and her standing there with her arms crossed, pretending not to be impressed. We were friendly. Too friendly, maybe. But I kept my distance where it counted. I didn't ask her out. I didn't linger too long at her door. I didn't let myself think about how her voice softened when she said my name. Then the blackout happened. It was one of those summer nights when the air felt thick enough to chew. The whole city had been under a heat advisory for 3 days. By 9, my apartment was still hot, even with the fan running. By 10, lightning flickered behind the clouds without rain, just angry white veins across the sky. At 10:17, the power went out. Not a blink. Not a little dramatic flicker. Everything died. My fan stopped. The fridge hummed once and went silent. Somewhere down the hall, somebody shouted, "Seriously?" I stood in the dark, phone flashlight on, listening as doors opened up and down the hallway. The emergency lights near the stairwell glowed weak red. The building's old bones creaked in the heat. Outside, car alarms chirped and died. A dog barked like it had been personally betrayed. I was looking for batteries in my junk drawer when someone knocked on my door. 3 fast taps, then one softer one. I opened it and found Sabrina standing in the hallway holding a candle and a coffee mug. She had changed from whatever she'd worn during the day into a soft blue sundress, the kind with thin straps and little white flowers. Her curls were pinned up messily, and there was a sheen of sweat on her collarbone that I tried not to notice because I was a decent man with poor self-control and excellent eyesight. "Hey," she said, "hey. My apartment is hotter than actual soup." "That's a measurement now?" "It is when you're suffering." I leaned against the doorframe. "You came to report soup. Conditions?" No." She looked past me into my apartment. "Do you have a battery fan?" "I have two." Her eyes narrowed. "Of course you do. I work around job sites. Preparedness is 90% of survival." "And the other 10? Looking confident while panicking. That got the laugh out of her, a real one, quick and bright. Then her smile faded a little. Can I sit with you for a minute? She asked. Something in her voice shifted the whole night. Not scared exactly, not helpless, just honest. Yeah, I said, stepping back. Come in. She walked past me, and the candlelight moved with her, throwing gold over my kitchen cabinets and the half-built model bridge on my dining table. You're building something tiny, she said. It's a pedestrian bridge for a proposal. The real one will be bigger. I would hope so, otherwise very small pedestrians. I set one battery fan on the counter and angled it toward her. There, luxury accommodations. She stood in front of it and closed her eyes. I take back every sarcastic thing I've ever said about you. You once called me a handsome clipboard with anxiety. Her eyes opened. I froze. She froze. Because I had not meant to admit I remembered that. The corner of her mouth lifted slowly. You remembered the handsome part. I remembered the insult. Convenient. The air between us changed, not because of the blackout, not because of the heat, because for the first time neither of us pretended the flirting was accidental. She looked down first, tracing her thumb along the rim of the candle mug. My mom used to hate blackouts, she said quietly. She'd light every candle in the house and then act like it was a party so my sister and I wouldn't be nervous. Did it work? Mostly, except she'd always burn something because she insisted on cooking by candlelight. Sabrina smiled, but it was smaller this time. Grilled cheese should not be mysterious. I laughed softly. No, it should declare its intentions. She looked at me, and that softness in her eyes hit me harder than any flirtation had. My mom died last year, she said. I didn't say the first dumb comfort that came to mind. I'd learned people didn't need perfect words. They needed you not to run from the moment. I'm sorry, I said. She nodded. Thanks. The fan hummed between us. I don't usually get weird about the dark, she added. Tonight just brought it back, I guess. You're not weird. You don't know that. I alphabetize my spices. That's organization. By emotional value. That's weird. She smiled again, grateful this time. A crack of thunder rolled over the building close enough to rattle the window. Sabrina flinched, just a little, but I saw it. She also saw me see it. I'm fine, she said quickly. I didn't say you weren't. You made a face. This is just my face. Your face said, I must now become noble and protective. My face has been accused of worse. She hugged her arms around herself. I don't need rescuing, Luke. I know. That seemed to surprise her. I picked up the second battery fan. But if you want company, I can do company. Her gaze held mine. Outside, the hallway filled with voices, doors opening, someone laughing too loudly. Inside my apartment, it felt like the world had narrowed to a candle flame and the sound of her breathing. I was hoping you'd say that, she said. There it was. Not fear. Choice. She wanted me there, and I wanted to be wanted by her more than I was comfortable admitting. We decided her place would be cooler because she had a balcony door that actually caught a breeze now that I'd fixed it. She made a point of saying, your handiwork may save lives tonight, and I made a point of pretending that didn't make me proud. I grabbed both fans, a flashlight, and a bag of ice from my freezer that was already starting to sweat. Her apartment smelled like vanilla candles, graphite pencils, and something citrusy. Sketches were taped above her desk. A half-finished illustration of an old woman dancing barefoot in rain sat on a tablet near the window. You drew that? I asked. No, a raccoon broke in and started a portfolio. Sarcastic raccoon, talented. She set the candle on the counter. It's for a children's book. The grandmother teaches the kid that storms don't always mean trouble. I looked at the drawing again. That's good. She didn't deflect, not fully. Thanks, she said, and the word came out quiet. We ended up on the kitchen floor because the tile was cooler than the couch. She brought out a carton of chocolate chip ice cream and 2 spoons. This is dinner now, she said. I support your leadership. Good, I run a relaxed dictatorship. We sat shoulder to shoulder, our backs against the lower cabinets, knees almost touching. The fan pushed warm air around like it was doing its best. Her candle flickered on the counter, and every now and then, lightning lit the room, pale blue. She handed me the carton. Our fingers brushed. It was nothing. It was absolutely not nothing. Sabrina looked at our hands, then at me. For once, she didn't make a joke. I could have moved away. Should have, maybe. Instead, I stayed right there, close enough to feel the warmth of her arm against mine. Luke, she said softly, yeah? If I ask you something, will you answer like a normal person and not like a man trying to escape through a window? I can try, no promises. Her smile flickered, then faded. Why haven't you ever asked me out? The spoon stopped halfway to my mouth. The building was dark, the city was sweating. My carefully built rules sat there between us like cheap furniture in a flood. I looked at her, and before I could answer, the lights snapped back on. Every lamp in her apartment blazed at once. The fridge kicked. The hallway buzzed. Somewhere, a neighbor cheered. And Sabrina was suddenly not beside me anymore. She was standing in the hallway outside her bedroom, wearing my white dress shirt. Only my shirt. Her blue sundress was draped over one arm, soaked dark down the front from the melted bag of ice she must have grabbed when it split. Her cheeks flushed. My brain forgot every language it had ever known. Then she lifted her chin, met my eyes, and said, "So, about that question." There are moments when a man discovers what he is made of. Some men are made of courage. Some are made of discipline. Apparently, I was made of silence and a desperate need to stare at the ceiling. Sabrina stood in the hall with my white shirt falling to mid-thigh. Sleeves rolled badly, one shoulder slipping wide because the shirt had been designed for me and not for a woman who could ruin my entire nervous system by breathing. I knew that shirt. I'd left it at her place 2 weeks earlier after fixing her balcony door. I'd used it to wipe grease off my hands, she'd thrown it in her laundry, and I'd forgotten to ask for it back. Or maybe I hadn't forgotten. Maybe some pathetic part of me liked knowing something of mine was in her apartment. "Luke," she said. "Hmm?" "My eyes are up here." I was looking at the floor. "You were looking at my knees." I was concerned about structural integrity. "My knees?" "The floor." Her mouth twitched. That saved me. Her smile, the familiar spark of it. The shock eased enough for me to remember we were still us. She lifted the wet sundress in one hand. "The ice bag committed a crime." "I see that." I panicked and grabbed the first dry thing in the laundry basket. "My shirt." "Yes." "Which you kept." "It was hostage laundry, standard neighbor policy." "You could have returned it." "You could have asked." There it was again, that thin, bright wire between us, humming. I stood slowly because staying on the floor while she stood there in my shirt felt somehow worse. Better. Dangerous. The kitchen light above us was too bright after the candle lit dark. It showed everything. The damp curls clinging to her neck, the flush across her cheekbones, the way her fingers twisted in the hem of the shirt like she was brave enough to ask the question, but not immune to the answer. "Why haven't you ever asked me out?" I cleared my throat. "Because you live next door." "That's your reason?" "One of them." "Is the other one that I alphabetized spices by emotional value?" "Honestly, that moved you up the list." She stepped closer, still holding the ruined dress. "What list?" "The hypothetical list. The one where you hypothetically want to ask me out?" I looked at her then. Really looked. And I was tired of being careful. "Yes," I said. "That list." Her teasing expression softened so fast it nearly undid me. "Oh, yeah." The apartment felt different with the power back. Less secretive, but more real. The fans hummed. The fridge rattled. Rain finally began to hit the balcony in fat, uneven drops. I shoved my hands into my pockets so I wouldn't reach for her before I knew I was invited. "I had a bad experience dating someone I couldn't avoid afterward," I said. "Different situation, but it made things messy. Since then, I've had rules." "Rules," she repeated. "Stupid ones, maybe." She took another step closer. "And where exactly do I appear in these rules?" "Underlined." Her eyes warmed. "That sounds serious." "It has footnotes." "Luke." I breathed out a laugh, but it faded. "I didn't ask because I like seeing you in the hallway. I like hearing you laugh through the wall when you're watching terrible reality shows." They are social experiments. They are crimes against editing. Careful. I like that you leave sticky notes on your door reminding yourself to buy oat milk, and then you forget anyway. I like that you talk to dogs in the courtyard like they're coworkers you respect. They have better communication skills than most people. I didn't ask because if you said no, I'd still have to see you every day. And if you said yes and it went wrong, I shrugged. I didn't want to lose the little pieces of you I already had. For a second, she just stared. The rain got harder, pattering against the balcony glass. Then Sabrina set the wet dress over the back of a chair and walked right up to me. She was close enough that I could smell vanilla candle smoke and cold chocolate from the ice cream. "You idiot," she whispered. I blinked. That wasn't the response I prepared for. You thought the choice was ask me and lose me, or never ask and keep me. It sounded more logical in my head. It sounds lonely. That landed, because it was. Her fingers touched my wrist, lightly, not trapping me, asking me, "I don't want to be a little piece, Luke." My pulse hit once, hard. "What do you want to be?" Her gaze dropped to my mouth, then came back up. "Asked." Every rule I had left fell over. "Sabrina," I said, "will you go out with me?" She smiled, and it was not sharp this time. It was pleased, almost shy. "Yes." The word moved through me like summer rain. Then, because she was Sabrina, she added, "Though technically I asked you to ask me, so I expect effort on the actual date." I can do effort. Good. I'm high maintenance emotionally, not financially. I'll budget accordingly. She laughed, and I reached up before I could overthink it, brushing a damp curl away from her cheek. She went still, not tense, waiting. My hand lingered near her jaw. "Is this okay?" Her answer was to rise onto her toes and kiss me. Soft at first. A question. Then my hand slid to the side of her neck and her fingers curled in my t-shirt, and the question became an answer we'd both been avoiding for weeks. She tasted like chocolate, nerves, and something sweet that was just her. The kiss deepened slowly, not rushed, not careless, like we were both aware a line had been crossed and neither of us wanted to step back. When we broke apart, her forehead rested against my chin. "That was overdue," she murmured. Wildly. I had theories. About my kissing? About your restraint. She tilted her head back. "Your kissing is better than your restraint." "That's going on my business cards." She smiled, but then a loud knock hit her front door. Both of us froze. "Sabrina," a woman called from the hall. "You okay?" The lights came back and I heard something spill. It was Mrs. Alvarez from 3A, retired nurse, building watchdog, an undefeated champion of knowing everyone's business before they knew it themselves. Sabrina closed her eyes. "If she sees me in your shirt, she'll have us married by breakfast. I can hide on the balcony. It's raining. I'll commit." She pressed a hand over her mouth to smother a laugh, then pointed toward her bedroom. "Go. 2 seconds." I obeyed, though hiding in the bedroom of a woman I'd just kissed while she answered the door wearing my shirt did not feel like behavior supported by any rulebook. From the doorway, I heard Sabrina crack open the front door. "Hi, Mrs. Alvarez, I'm fine." Ice bag exploded. "You sure? I saw Luke come in." "A beat." "Yes," Sabrina said, voice bright. "He brought fans." "Very handy, man." "Very." I stared at the bedroom wall and tried not to grin like an idiot. Mrs. Alvarez said something too low to hear. Sabrina made a scandalized sound. "Good night, Mrs. Alvarez." The door shut. I stepped back into the hall. "Very handy?" Her face was pink. "She's old, not blind." "And you?" "I'm neither." We stood there smiling at each other, the interruption somehow making the whole thing feel more intimate instead of less. Like we had a secret now, warm and alive between us. Sabrina walked to the kitchen and picked up the abandoned ice cream carton, now mostly soup. She held it out. "First date dessert?" "This is our first date." She leaned against the counter, bare feet on the tile, my shirt hanging loose around her. Power outage, candlelight, shared dessert, confession, kiss, nosy chaperone. It has structure. I didn't plan it. You fixed my balcony door. That was groundwork. I took the carton and set it aside. Then for our second date, I'm planning something with actual plates. Ambitious. And chairs. Slow down, Mercer. I moved closer again, but not all the way. Tomorrow night? Her teasing softened. Yes. Dinner? Yes. I'll pick you up at 7. She glanced toward the shared wall between our apartments. You'll walk 6 feet. I'll still knock. You better. For a while, we didn't say anything. We just stood in her bright kitchen after the blackout, listening to rain and electricity and the small new silence that follows a first kiss. Then Sabrina reached for my hand. Not my wrist this time. My hand. Her fingers threaded through mine like she'd decided something. I'm glad the lights went out, she said. I looked down at our joined hands, then at her. I'm glad they came back on. Her smile turned slow. Because of the shirt? Among other revelations. She laughed and tugged me closer, close enough that our shoulders touched. And when I kissed her again, it wasn't because of heat or darkness or a strange summer night. It was because she had asked to be chosen, and I was choosing her. The next morning, I woke up smiling at my ceiling like a man who'd been hit in the head and enjoyed it. Then I remembered Sabrina in my shirt, her fingers laced with mine, her mouth warm under mine, and the smile got worse. At 8:12, my phone buzzed. Sabrina. Are we pretending to be normal in the hallway or failing immediately? Me? I can be normal. Sabrina. You once labeled your junk drawer. Me. Organization is not a crime. Sabrina. See you at 7, organized man. I stared at that message for too long. Work was useless. I approved the wrong tile sample, called a supplier by the name of his own company, and spent a full minute looking for a pen I was holding. By 4, my boss told me to go home before I accidentally ordered a crane. I got back to the building at 6 with flowers in one hand and takeout menus in the other, because I'd overthought dinner until restaurants began to feel like moral choices. Mrs. Alvarez was in the lobby watering a plant that had been dead since March. She looked at the flowers, then at me, then at apartment 3C's mailbox. Subtle, she said. I enjoy supporting local florists. I could be buying them for myself. You should. Men need beauty too. She patted my arm. But those are for the pretty illustrator. I gave up. Please don't make it weird. My dear boy, I live for weird. By 7, I had changed shirts 3 times and settled on the first one. I stepped into the hallway with the flowers and knocked on Sabrina's door like I had not been inside her apartment less than 24 hours ago, kissing her against the kitchen counter. She opened the door wearing a green sundress, silver earrings, and a look that made every rehearsed sentence fall out of my head. Her gaze dropped to the flowers. Oh, she said, softer than I expected. I know they're traditional. They're beautiful. I considered bringing a battery fan, but that felt too soon. She laughed and took the bouquet. Come in while I put these in water. Her apartment looked different in daylight. Or maybe I did. The sketches on her walls seemed more intimate now, pieces of her mind pinned up where I could see them. On her desk was the illustration of the grandmother in the rain, more finished than before. You worked on it today? I asked. A little. She trimmed the stems at the sink. I was distracted. By what? She shot me a look. A very complicated shirt situation. I heard those can be serious. Symptoms include poor judgment, hallway kissing, and agreeing to dates with men who own multiple flashlights. Terminal? Depends on dinner. I held up the menus. I panicked. Sabrina turned from the sink. Luke, what? You planned a date by committee with yourself. I had options. You brought 4 menus. 5, one is folded. She set the flowers in a glass pitcher and came over, taking the menus from my hand. Her fingers brushed mine, and just like the night before, the smallest contact changed the room. She looked at me through her lashes. Do you trust me? That question has historically led to property damage. Answer. Yes. Her smile tilted. Good. We're having a balcony picnic. With what food? She opened her refrigerator and pulled out a container. Pasta salad. That's it? And peaches and crackers and wine I bought because the label had a fox on it. You've been preparing for this? Her confidence faltered for half a second. I hoped, she said. That one word rearranged me, not flirted, not guessed, hoped. I crossed the kitchen slowly. How long? She busied herself with plates. Since the bookshelf. The first day? You were very serious about floor damage. Sabrina. She glanced up. I took the plates from her hands and set them down. How long? Her cheeks colored. Since you came back 20 minutes later with those little felt pads for the bottom of the shelf. You didn't say anything dramatic. You just stuck them on and said, now your vision has boundaries. I remembered that. I remembered wanting to stay and ask about every drawing on her wall. I thought you were cute, she admitted. Then annoying. Then cute again. That's a journey. It had range. I stepped closer. I noticed you that day too. Because I was destroying common property? Because you were determined. And funny. And you looked at me like you already knew I was going to help. You did help. I wanted to. The air warmed between us in a way that had nothing to do with July. She lifted her hand and touched the center of my chest with one finger. Then maybe stop acting surprised that I wanted you back. I caught her hand and kissed her knuckles. Her breath caught. It was such a small sound, but it made me feel powerful and careful at the same time. Balcony picnic, I said, because if I kissed her then, dinner would become theoretical. Right, she whispered. Food, civilized behavior. We ate outside as the evening cooled. Her balcony overlooked the courtyard where the magnolia tree still dripped from last night's rain. Someone below grilled onions. A radio played an old love song from an open window. Sabrina sat cross-legged on a blanket, shoes kicked off, her plate balanced on one knee. I sat beside her close enough that our shoulders bumped whenever one of us reached for the crackers. It was simple. It was perfect. She told me about the children's book, how the author was nervous and brilliant and sent emails at 2 a.m. I told her about the pedestrian bridge project and how I liked building things people used without thinking about them. That sounds lonely, she said. Bridges? Being proud in private. I looked at her. She had a talent for finding the bruise under the joke. Maybe, I said, but there's comfort in making something that holds. Her expression softened. That makes sense for you. Yeah? You're a holding person? I didn't know what to do with that. So I looked down at my plate like pasta salad contained instructions. Sabrina nudged my knee with hers. That was a compliment, Mercer. I'm processing. Do you need a labeled drawer for feelings? Several. She laughed, then grew quiet. After a moment, she said, My dad left when I was 12. Mom made everything feel steady after that, even when it wasn't. After she died, I realized how much of home was just her insisting it existed. I set my plate down. Sabrina stared out over the courtyard. Moving here was supposed to be a fresh start. New city, new work, new neighbors I would not develop inconvenient feelings for. I ruined your plan. You and your felt pads. I smiled, but my chest ached. She looked at me then. I don't need someone to fix my life. I need someone who wants to stand in it with me, even when it's messy. I want that, I said. Her eyes searched mine. Do you? Yes. I took her hand on the blanket. And I'm scared of it. But yes. She threaded her fingers through mine. I can work with scared. I can't work with halfway. I'm not halfway. The words came out fast. Certain. She leaned in and kissed me. This kiss was different from the blackout kisses. There was no surprise in it now, no question left to answer. It was slow and sun-warmed, her hand sliding to my jaw, my palms settling at her waist, as if it had been waiting for permission all day. A cheer rose from the courtyard. We broke apart. Below us, Mrs. Alvarez stood near the magnolia tree with a watering can in hand, pretending she had not just witnessed everything. Sabrina buried her face against my shoulder. We are doomed. I waved down at Mrs. Alvarez. She waved back with the solemn dignity of a queen blessing a union. Sabrina groaned. By tomorrow, the whole building will know. Good, I said. She lifted her head. Good? I don't want to hide you. That stopped her. The teasing left her face, replaced by something tender and almost unguarded. You sure? I brushed my thumb along her waist. Very. Her smile came slowly. That may be the hottest thing you've said. I can also talk about load-bearing beams. Don't tempt me. My phone buzzed beside my plate. I ignored it. It buzzed again, then again. Sabrina glanced down. You should check. I sighed and picked it up. 3 missed calls from my boss. 1 text. Need you at the Riverside site now. Emergency inspection moved up. Client furious. If this fails, we lose the contract. I stared at the screen, the old reflex kicking in. Solve it, leave, apologize later. Sabrina watched my face change. Work? She asked. Yeah. Go. I looked at her hand still in mine. I don't want to. I know. She squeezed once. But I don't want to be the woman you resent because you stayed. I wouldn't. Maybe not tonight, but go handle it, then come back if it's not too late. That sounded reasonable. It also sounded like a test neither of us had meant to create. I leaned in and kissed her again, brief but deliberate. I'm coming back. Her eyes held mine. I'll leave the balcony light on. As I left her apartment, I felt the shape of the night changing behind me. Not ending, just waiting to see if I meant what I'd said. I made it to the Riverside site in 17 minutes, which was impressive considering I spent 12 of them thinking about turning around. The project was a boutique hotel renovation near the river, all exposed brick, steel beams, and clients who used words like artisan when they meant expensive. By the time I arrived, my boss Victor was pacing near the entrance with his phone pressed to his ear and murder in his eyes. There you are, he said, like I'd been vacationing in Greece instead of leaving the best first date of my life. What happened? Inspector moved the walkthrough to tomorrow morning. Client wants everything documented tonight. Fire separation, stairwell corrections, railing measurements, the works. I looked at the dark building. Tonight. Unless you've got something better to do. I thought of Sabrina on her balcony, the soft glow on her face when I said I didn't want to hide her. Yes, I said. Victor blinked. What? I rubbed a hand over my mouth. Nothing, give me the list. For the next 3 hours, I measured, photographed, logged, and argued. Sweat glued my shirt to my back. Mosquitoes treated me like a buffet. A subcontractor swore he'd installed fire-rated caulk where he absolutely had not installed fire-rated caulk. Normally, this was where I disappeared into work completely. That night, I kept seeing Sabrina's hand in mine. At 10:06, she texted, Sabrina, balcony lights still on. No, pressure. Just romantic wattage. I laughed in the stairwell like an idiot. Me. Still at sight. I'm sorry. Sabrina, don't be sorry. Be accurate. Are you eating? Me. I had half a protein bar from my glove box. Sabrina, that is not food. That is a dare. Me. It had almonds. Sabrina, come back alive. I have crackers and emotional judgment. I stared at the screen, smiling so hard my face hurt. Then Victor called my name and the night swallowed me again. By 11:30, the documents were uploaded, the missing caulk had been photographed in damning detail, and Victor was thanking me in the emotionally constipated way men in construction often did. Good work, he said. Saved us. I nodded, already walking toward my truck. Mercer. I stopped. Victor studied me. You were distracted tonight. I still got it done. You did, but distracted is new for you. I didn't answer. He smirked faintly. Who is she? I should have dodged. Made a joke. Kept Sabrina tucked safely out of my professional life, away from anyone else's commentary, and instead I said, someone I'm going back to. Victor's smirk softened into something almost human. Then go. I drove home with the windows down, letting hot night air batter some sense into me. It was close to midnight when I parked. The building was quiet, most windows dark. Except 3C. Her balcony light glowed warm against the brick. She had meant it. I stood in the courtyard for a second, looking up at that light, feeling something inside me shift from wanting to be chosen to wanting to be worthy of it. When I reached the 3rd floor, her door opened before I knocked. Sabrina stood there in soft shorts and an oversized gray t-shirt, curls piled on top of her head, face bare and sleepy. She was the prettiest thing I had ever been late for. You came back, she said. I said I would. I know, I just. She shrugged, and the movement was small enough to hurt. People say things. I stepped closer, but didn't touch her yet. I'm not people. Her mouth trembled like she wanted to smile and couldn't quite manage it. No, she said. You're a handsome clipboard with anxiety. That did it. I laughed, and she laughed too, and then she reached for me with both hands, pulling me inside by my shirt. Her apartment was dim except for one lamp and the balcony light. The remains of our picnic had been cleared away, but 2 plates sat on the coffee table with crackers, sliced peaches, and a little square of cheese on each. You made me a plate? I asked. I made you a judgment platter. It's beautiful. It's nutritionally questionable. I caught her hand before she could step away. Thank you. She looked down at our joined fingers. You're welcome. Something quiet settled over us. Not awkward, not charged exactly. Real. I hated leaving, I said. I hated watching you leave. My chest tightened. I'm sorry. I don't want you sorry. She lifted her eyes. I want you honest. Okay. She took a breath. When you got that text, I saw you disappear for a second, like the date was suddenly a mistake you had to fix by working harder. I flinched because she was right. Sabrina didn't soften it. I can handle your job being demanding, I can handle late nights. But I can't fall for someone who only shows up when nothing else needs him. Fall for. The words landed between us, bright and terrifying. You're falling for me? I asked quietly. Her cheeks colored. That was not the main point. It became a point. Luke, I'm here, I said. And I don't mean physically, I mean, I hear you. Her guarded expression eased a fraction. I held her hand with both of mine. I've spent a long time being useful because useful felt safer than being wanted. If someone needed me, I knew what to do. If someone wanted me, I shook my head. That's harder. There's no checklist. Sabrina's thumb moved over my knuckles. I don't need perfect, she said. I know. Do you? I looked at her then, at this woman who challenged me while feeding me crackers at midnight, who could tease and reach and tell the truth without making it cruel. I'm learning, I said, but I want to learn with you. Her eyes shone. I took a breath. And yes, I'm falling for you too. The apartment went very still. Then Sabrina stepped into me and wrapped her arms around my waist. I held her carefully at first, then tighter when she pressed her face into my chest. Her body softened against mine, warm and solid and trusting. I rested my cheek on top of her hair and closed my eyes. There was no blackout now. No candlelight excuse, no accidental shirt. Just us choosing the next inch. I was mad at you for 30 minutes, she mumbled into my shirt. Only 30? Then I got worried you were eating glove box food. I was. She pulled back and glared. Luke. It had almonds. That defense already failed by text. I smiled. She tried not to. Failed. I bent and kissed her, slow and grateful. She answered immediately, her hands sliding up my back, her mouth warm and sweet from peaches. The kiss deepened, then gentled, then became the kind of kiss that felt less like hunger and more like coming home to a place you hadn't known you missed. When we parted, she touched my face. Stay a while? Yes. Not because I'm sad. Not because the lights are out. I know. Because I want you here. I kissed her palm. Then I'm staying because I want to be here. We sat on her couch with the judgment platter between us, knees tangled under a throw blanket, even though the apartment was still warm. She made me eat every cracker. I told her about the missing caulk scandal with enough drama that she gasped in all the right places. At some point, she leaned her head on my shoulder. At some point after that, I realized I was happy in a way that scared me less than it should have. Around 1, my phone buzzed again. I ignored it. Sabrina lifted her head. Work? I checked the screen. Unknown number. One text. Mr. Mercer, this is Diane Hale, property manager. Need to speak with you tomorrow regarding a complaint involving apartment 3C. I stared at it. Sabrina saw my face change. What is it? I hesitated, Then I remembered what she'd asked for. Honest. I handed her the phone. She read it, eyebrows drawing together. A complaint? About my apartment? Looks like it. Her lips parted, and for a moment I saw the worry creep in. I took her hand before it could grow into something bigger. Tomorrow, I said. Not tonight. She looked at me. We'll deal with it tomorrow, I repeated. Tonight I came back. Slowly she nodded. Then she set my phone face down on the table and curled into my side again. Tonight, she agreed. And before either of us let the world back in, I kissed her hair, held her close, and stayed. Morning arrived with sunlight on Sabrina's living room floor and her head on my shoulder. I woke before she did, stiff-necked from the couch and ridiculously content. Sometime around 3, we'd stopped pretending either of us planned to move. Her hand was still curled in my shirt, like even asleep she'd made a decision, and intended to keep it. My phone sat face down on the coffee table. The complaint waited there. So did the rest of the world. But for a few minutes I let myself stay inside the quiet. Sabrina breathing softly. The balcony light still on, though the sun had made it unnecessary. 2 plates on the table, empty except for cracker crumbs and 1 stubborn peach slice. Then she stirred. Tell me we didn't sleep on the couch, she mumbled. We didn't sleep on the couch. She opened one eye. Liar. You requested comfort, not accuracy. Her smile came slow and sleepy. Morning, organized man. Morning, spy switch. She laughed, then winced and rubbed her neck. Romance is painful. I can make coffee. Romance is restored. While the coffee brewed, the message from Diane Hale sat between us like an unopened bill. Sabrina leaned against the counter in pajama shorts, arms folded, trying to look casual and failing. I don't understand what anyone could complain about, she said. I don't throw parties. I don't play loud music. I don't even own tap shoes. That you know of. Do not joke about secret tap shoes before coffee. I handed her a mug. Our fingers brushed, and even with worry in the room, that small spark was still there. She looked down at the cup. What if this is because of us? Us kissing on the balcony? Mrs. Alvarez did cheer with her eyes. Her eyes are powerful, but I don't think they file paperwork. At 10, we went downstairs to the management office together. Not because Sabrina needed me to handle it. She made that clear. I can speak for myself, she said outside the office door, and I know. But I want you with me. I reached for her hand. That's why I'm here. Diane Hale, the property manager, sat behind a desk covered in folders and a mug that said, Don't make me email you again. She looked from Sabrina to me to our joined hands. Oh, she said. Well, that explains part of it. Sabrina's fingers tightened around mine. Part of what? Diane sighed and opened a folder. We received an anonymous complaint claiming apartment 3C was violating lease terms by running an unauthorized business with frequent late-night male visitors. Sabrina blinked. I'm a freelance illustrator. The late-night male visitor was one man, once. Twice, I said, then immediately regretted it. Sabrina shot me a look. Diane's mouth twitched. I cleared my throat. Not helpful, sorry. Diane pulled out a printed photo. It showed Sabrina's balcony from the courtyard, her sketches visible through the glass door, and in the corner, me leaning in to kiss her. Sabrina went crimson. I stared. That's invasive. It is, Diane said, and unacceptable. The complaint appears to be less about lease violations and more about someone being nosy. Who sent it? Sabrina asked. Anonymous. A knock sounded behind us. Mrs. Alvarez stepped into the doorway holding her purse like she was entering court. It was Mr. Bell from 2D. Diane closed her eyes. Mrs. Alvarez. He told me at the mailboxes, Mrs. Alvarez continued. Said young people have no shame and artists are suspicious because they keep odd hours. Sabrina's mouth fell open. I draw rabbits in raincoats. Very suspicious rabbits, I said. She elbowed me, but she was fighting a smile. Diane removed the photo from the file and slid it into a shredder beside her desk. There is no violation here. Ms. Cole, you're allowed to work from home. Mr. Mercer, you're allowed to visit. preferably without giving the entire courtyard a live performance, but that is not a lease issue. Mrs. Alvarez sniffed. It was tasteful. Thank you, Sabrina said weakly. I squeezed her hand. The complaint should have ruined the morning. It should have made everything awkward, made us retreat into caution and hallway distance. Instead, as we walked back upstairs, Sabrina stopped on the landing between the second and third floors. You know what's strange? She said. What? Yesterday, I would have been embarrassed enough to hide for a week. And now? She looked at our hands. Now I'm mostly annoyed he got my bad side in the photo. You don't have a bad side. That was smooth. It was true. She stepped closer on the stair, putting us nearly eye to eye. You didn't let go of my hand in there. I didn't want to. In front of Diane and Mrs. Alvarez. And the ghost of Mr. Bell's judgment. Especially him. Her gaze softened. That mattered to me. I brushed my thumb over her knuckles. You matter to me. The stairwell was hot and smelled faintly of paint and old carpet, but when she kissed me there, with sunlight cutting through the narrow window behind her, it felt better than any perfect place could have. Because it was ours. Messy. Public enough to be brave. Private enough to be tender. When we reached the third floor, she paused between our doors. So, she said, are we still pretending to be normal neighbors? I looked at 3B, then 3C. 6 feet of hallway. 2 doors. One rule I no longer needed. No. Her smile spread. Good answer. A year after that blackout, Sabrina's balcony looked completely different. There were herbs in blue pots along the railing, though she insisted the basil was emotionally unreliable. A string of warm lights hung overhead. My old white dress shirt had somehow become a painting smock, permanently marked with tiny streaks of blue and gold. We didn't live together yet, but we'd stopped pretending our apartments were separate countries. Her mugs were in my cabinet. My spare charger lived by her couch. Every Friday, we had dinner on the balcony, even if dinner was takeout eaten from containers because both of us had worked too late. By then, the children's book was published. On the dedication page, Sabrina had written, "For my mother, who taught me storms can become stories, and for Els, who stayed." I read it in the bookstore aisle and had to pretend I was deeply interested in a display of bookmarks until I could speak again. That night, we celebrated with a balcony picnic like our first date. Pasta salad, peaches, crackers, and wine with a fox on the label. Sabrina wore my shirt over a black tank top, sleeves rolled badly as ever. You know, I said, that shirt used to be mine. She held up her glass. Love is theft. Pretty sure that's not the saying. It is in this apartment. I reached across the blanket and took her hand. The city hummed below us. Somewhere, Mrs. Alvarez laughed in the courtyard. The lights flickered once during a distant roll of thunder, and Sabrina looked at me. Neither of us moved. Neither of us was afraid. Then the power went out. The courtyard below disappeared into darkness. A few neighbors groaned. Someone shouted, "Not again!" Sabrina's face glowed faintly in the battery lantern I had placed by the door because preparedness was still 90% of survival. She looked at the lantern, then at me. Of course you have that ready. I'm a holding person. Her expression changed at that, softened, opened. Yes, she said. You are. She crawled across the blanket and settled into my lap like it was the most natural place in the world. I wrapped my arms around her and she leaned her forehead against mine. The blackout that had started us had returned, but everything was different now. That first night, she'd asked me to stay because the dark had brought back grief. Now she stayed because we had built something bright enough to carry with us. When the lights came back a few minutes later, she was still in my shirt, still smiling, still mine, in the only way that mattered, because every day she chose me back. And I kissed her under the restored glow of the balcony lights, grateful for the heat, the storm, the ruined dress, the nosy neighbors, and every broken rule that had led me to her. What would you have done if your neighbor asked you to stay during a blackout? And when the lights came back, she was standing there in your shirt? Have you ever experienced something similar, where one unexpected night changed everything? Tell your story in the comments. And for those who'd like to be a little closer to us, we've opened memberships, where you'll get shorter exclusive stories every week with no ads. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.